this is Agrippa Maxentius on behalf of Slytherin Games, and I'm going to show you some of the different terrain types in order of Battle Pacific and their importance in the game. Now, one of these terrain types, guys, is called difficult terrain, and this is essentially a hilly but flat landscape, not particularly jungle, but certainly a good place to set up some entrenchments and maybe even launch a counterattack from. Now, I'll show you the difference here in the difficult terrain over here. As you can see, we actually have, once we click the difficult terrain button, we see that we have a 50% cover percentage. This is pretty good, but there are better forms of terrain. I'm going to go ahead and show you a few more to give you an idea of the differences between the others. Now, if we have a fortified piece of terrain, for instance, fortifications here, now this is open terrain, and this makes things a little different. At the same time, this open terrain does have some fortifications here, which assist in our defense, but just to show the terrain information panel for open terrain, you would see this would not be a great place to have units defending. The cover is 0%. Anybody firing across this open terrain is sure to spot us and sure to take some pretty clean shots. Now, if you're anything like me, guys, you love to set up some ambushes, and that makes jungle terrain right here absolutely perfect. Now, make sure you're not in semi-jungle terrain, and make sure that the entire terrain landscape itself is covered by these sort of tropical trees, and you'll see that the defensive bonus or cover percentage you're getting here is 80%. This is absolutely amazing. This is a really great place to defend from. Now, the only issue here is that, as you can see, the disruption penalty for moving through here is -2. That means if I was to walk, for instance, up this road and make it 4 spaces, if this road was all jungle, I would now have to only be able to walk 2 spaces. This can obviously become a problem if you're moving through this terrain, but an excellent place from which to launch a defensive counterattack or just a mere defense. Now, mountainous terrain is a very interesting terrain type. In this case, it doesn't have as strong a cover percentage as jungle. It's only about 70%, and it also has the same disruption penalty. However, if you're a defender or an attacker on this particular form of terrain, you're going to get an 0.5 combat bonus. And this is very, very helpful, especially if you're attacking an enemy on open land, rough terrain, something like that. If you're attacking an enemy in a jungle from a mountain, this penalty is going to balance out, and it is probably going to be a very even fight. Nonetheless, mountains are also an excellent place to launch an attack from, and a great place to set up a nice, strong defensive system. And finally, guys, we come to village terrain. Village terrain or city terrain is an excellent place from which to form a defense. If you guys can see here, we've got a +1 combat factor as a defender or an attacker in this terrain. We get 60% cover, which obviously isn't the best cover, but whenever you're taking a city, or if you're in control of a city defending against an enemy, you're going to have a much easier time because of these bonuses. Of course, eventually the enemy will push through, but especially if you've got an enemy in city terrain like this, it may take more than 1 or 2 units to force that enemy off the particular square. Now, be very careful. Not all terrain types that look different are necessarily different. For instance, this terrain type, although it's got some jungle on the edge, is still considered difficult terrain. Whereas this terrain type over here, which has absolutely no jungles on it, but is very hilly, is also considered difficult terrain. You want to keep these things in mind, because sometimes you may make the mistake of believing that you're in a defensive jungle zone, like I thought I was here, when in fact you're only in a difficult terrain zone. So you want to go ahead and probably get into a better position, or if this is where you want to start your attack from anyway, then get started on that attack. Because in this position, you're not going to be nearly as strong, for instance, if you were to move a step back and stay in the mountainous terrain as I just did there. Now, to give you a little idea of an offensive attack using terrain as a basis, we could obviously jump into this much more difficult terrain of being in the middle of a river, or we could hit this not-so-difficult terrain right here and attack the enemy. And already you could see that the attack bonuses change. Over here, we're going to do 3 for 1. Over here, only 2 for 1. So let's go ahead and hit this difficult terrain, hit the enemy, and see how it goes. And in this case, we only got 2. Of course, a lot of other things come into effect. A lot of this is based on sort of by chance a scenario. It depends. You may very well get lucky and manage to hold out against a difficult attack, even if the enemy is superior. However, if you take a look here, terrain also doesn't always win you the game. In this particular defense here on my hill, I defended against this Japanese unit, and I actually took 2 losses while they took none. They're attacking from difficult terrain, and I'm defending on mountainous terrain. The difference here is the actual rank and skill of our unit types. I have Philippine recruits here, and they have crack Japanese units, which are extremely effective. So these are other things you want to take into account before you use terrain only as an ideal sort of medium for bettering your game. Well, guys, I do hope this video was informative and helpful, and most importantly, I hope that this can help you understand the terrain dynamics in a game like Order of Battle Pacific, and I really hope it can help you improve your game, harness your skill, and decide exactly what kind of general you want to be. Take care, guys. Have a great day.